Today, we're diving into one of the biggest myths in modern psychology and economics, the idea that money stops increasing your happiness after a certain point. Look, you've probably heard it before. Often it's been said that happiness plateaus at about $75,000 US income a year. That's a catchy idea. It went viral. It shaped everything from personal finance advice to government policy. But as it turns out, it was misunderstood, and modern research suggests something very different. Hi, welcome to this week's episode of Demographics Decoded, the show that unveils the trends shaping your future. I'm Michael Yardney, and each week I'm joined by leading demographer Simon Kirstenmacher, and together we dig deep beneath the data to uncover the trends that are shaping our economy, our communities, and our future prosperity, and what that means for your business, your investments, and for your future prosperity. Of course, our aim is to help you make sense of what's coming next so you can make smarter decisions for your business, your investments, your life. And today I want to explore one of your articles, Simon, where you in the New Daily challenged our assumption about money, about income, about well-being, and what it actually means to live in a satisfied life in Australia today, Simon.
Yeah, it's a very good topic to discuss because it is so misunderstood. And if you read any kind of popular psychology book over the last decade, it was probably in there. Uh, and the narrative is, as you mentioned, it's very tempting. Is to go, we are about more than just money. And once you have enough money, any additional dollar is actually not worth earning it because you should rather spend your time socializing with other people, doing something more inherently meaningful. Do not sweat to get money. That makes sense on some sort of like deep moral, psychological,
Yep.
spiritual level. But yeah, as it turns out, the research that this was based on was a bit misquoted, misunderstood. And it has, of course, been assessed, which is very, very helpful.
Well, we'll dig into that because at the moment, with rising costs of living, housing affordability stretched, financial stress, it's touching more Australian households than ever. So I think this is very relevant today. Your article actually, I guess, debunked some of the old money and happiness debate. So let's start by clearing up some misconceptions. You explained where the original figure came from, how it was misinterpreted. Maybe we can go back to the original data that I've heard so often.
So the origin is a 2010 study by two absolute giants of behavioral psychology or behavioral economics. So how dare we to criticize them? So this is, of course, Daniel Kahneman, the late Daniel Kahneman, who won a couple of Nobel Prizes for this stuff, and Angus Deakin from Princeton. So this is just as profile as it gets.
Yes.
And their research essentially is linked on, let's think, so it's $75,000, 2010 study. So you need to first make sense of these numbers. You need to translate it from US dollars into Australian dollars and from 2010 currency into today's currency. So essentially they are saying in Australian terms, don't earn more than $174,000. Yeah, so it's a much higher number. So already this seems maybe a bit more realistic or something. Okay, so that's our Australian benchmark, $174,000. But beyond that, does happiness, so we say, does it actually make you happier? And then you go, well, let's not get caught up with this irresistible headline. It's not that money buys you happiness. So the nuance was lost. So we are saying there is more to work than pay. Meaning and purpose matter too. That is
Yes.
obvious. And the idea was gobbled up immediately because bosses liked it, companies liked it, because you go, wait a second, I can get more out of my workers without paying them more. That is awesome. That is too good to be true. So people wanted to do that. Let's increase performance without increasing pay. Let's do it. But that's not really what the study said. So essentially, the study said there are two different types of happiness. And the first one that they're exploring is called emotional well-being. So that is when you self-report your feeling of yesterday. So when you think about, boy, how happy, sad, stressed was I yesterday? So you must remember your feeling on average yesterday. And the second one, the first one, emotional well-being. The second one is life evaluation. So this is on a scale from 1 to X. How happy are you with your life, your overall rating of your life? And that number doesn't change as much you would expect from a day-to-day basis, because you might be wealthy and rich, but if something bad happens, you still feel sad on the day. And so there's the issue. So the thing said, the study said, your emotional well-being, how did you feel about yesterday? That kind of plateaued at 75,000 US dollars. But your life evaluation that said, like, I'm overall satisfied with my life, that continued to keep increasing well beyond that $75,000 margin. So you could say that money continues to buy you a higher sense of life satisfaction, even if it doesn't make you smile more on a daily basis. And that's an important distinction, but distinctions are annoying because they're not just one fun bumper sticker to throw on the back of your car. So that is annoying. I hope that kind of makes sense. Yeah. Overall life evaluation and day-to-day happiness. Two different
It does
pairs of
make
shoes.
sense, Simon. I've written about this in my book, Rich Habits, Poor Habits, with Tom Corley, who's studied the different way the rich people think and the average American thinks. I think I've often said that I used to say any problem that money can solve isn't really a problem, but I've changed that over the years to any problem money you have can solve isn't really a problem. I
Yeah.
remember a number of years ago on a Saturday morning, I had a cold shower. I'm not into cold showers. Our hot water service blew. And a lot of people would have waited, not called a serviceman, a plumber on a weekend when things cost 3 times as much. But I called our plumber on a Saturday morning. He got Reese to deliver a hot water service, and within 2 hours, we had a hot water service. I didn't have to think again about it. It's that old story that, again, any problem money can solve. So money is really important in those areas where it's important, but it's not at all important in other parts of your life, is it, Simon?
No, it's not. And so the idea is, if you look at rich people, poor people, they still have problems with their family relations, or
Yes.
fights with their neighbors or co-workers, whatever it is. All of these things still occur, but it is really the amount of stress that financial hardships can bring with them that really drives the quality of life down. So if you have a major car repair, unexpected car repair coming, a bill of $3,000-4,000, that is annoying, even if you are very, very wealthy. But that's not a problem. You can shrug this off. Whereas if money is really tight for you, this throws your whole year, your whole life around. You then need to cut from other expenses. This can be a major, major catastrophe. And that's where money comes in. And these things happen. You cannot expect these things not to occur, but you will still suffer from the memory of this if
Yes.
this really hit your heart, and you will have completely forgotten about it if you have enough money.
Well, we're not judging rich people and poor people as good or bad, but rich people in general are happier. And I remember reading a study that money does give you the opportunity to have more of these experiences and events that you can enjoy, but also that 50% of happiness is determined by your genes, 40% is happiness is determined by your activities, and 10% determined by your circumstances. So some people always seem to be miserable anyway, Simon, no matter how much money they've got.
No, no,
And if you've got
there
the
is
right
just
genetics, a lot of it's determined by what you do, but also by your circumstances. There are some things that you can't change.
exactly. And so we always try to differentiate whatever situation you find yourself in, and you have some sort of active role. And that's sometimes, some people overemphasize the active role that you can have in your life. So any kind of motivational book tends to overemphasize your role in your life, because yes, you have an impact, but of course you're also part of a broader system. So if the system is harshly discriminating against your sex, gender, race, whatever it is, then yes, you still have an impact on your quality of life, but it's much slowed down by that circumstance. Yeah, so we always need to figure out how much power do I have in a particular role. But of course, every now and then, if you focus on obsessing about the things where you are not in control of, you very much increase your own unhappiness. So it's very helpful to take control as much as you can, but realize that you only have control over so much.
Makes sense. Now, in your article, you then said after the original study in 2021, there was a new Killingsworth study. What was all that about?
Yeah, so that was really, really cool. So 11 years in 2021 after this research was published, a psychologist, Matthew Killingsworth, actually replicated this whole thing. And that's when you, and I've been partaking in studies like this throughout the 2010s, just for my own interest. So you get pinged by an app about your happiness in real life. So it goes like, how happy are you right now? And what are you doing? So it links your activities in daily life with your happiness impacts, and it also impacts your overall demographic data and your income and so forth. And that data showed that both emotional well-being and life evaluation, so your day-to-day happiness and your life evaluation, that they both continue to increase if you earn beyond this dollar threshold, which then, of course, was adjusted to 2021 figures and so forth. But essentially, money continued to make you happier, smile more, and it made you more overall satisfied with your life. And so then the argue there was that the idea of this happiness plateau, that was probably mistaken. So we might need to disregard this argument. And that, of course, we saw that Daniel Kahneman, who wrote the initial piece, he first disagreed with this. And then the unbelievable happened. They both teamed up and they
Really?
did a study together, and they called it for an adversarial collaboration. So they co-designed a study where they argued, hey, let's think about, for the majority of people, what should we set up the study to actually answer this question? And then we'll see what comes out. Let the scientific method actually work its way. And so they've done that. And so essentially their paper from 2023 showed that for most people, higher incomes did indeed correlate with higher well-being. For the majority of people, there are people where this is not the case. On a population level, more money did make you happier. Even for incomes beyond $100,000, this was the case. And there were, of course, and you mentioned this before, that some people just seem to be unhappier. And, you might have people like this in your friendship circle, in your family. Whatever happens to them, they're just a bit down. And is this a depression? Is this just a general outlook on life? Who knows what it is? But for some people, this happened to just have not been the case. And so we can say, in short, money helps. It's not a magic cure, of course, but if you read biographies of the rich and famous, you read many chapters where they are miserable as well. So you know that it is not the magic silver bullet, but it most certainly helps. Yeah?
I read somewhere, Simon, recently that the top 10 wealthiest people in the world, there were 13 divorces. So some of them had 3 or 4 divorces along the way as well. So you're right, money doesn't help everybody. But in Australia, is the context different here to where these studies were done in the United States?
Well, we, of course, would need to correct for higher dollar values. So we would just say, let's look at this at a very high dollar value. And so, well, we can do this based on census data. So we can do a quick proxy analysis. Because at the 2021 census, we asked for the first time, hey, do you have a medically diagnosed chronic health condition? And one of those answers was a medically diagnosed chronic mental health condition. And so let's take the answer of I have a medically diagnosed chronic health condition as, a lack of happiness in your life. This is imprecise, but it's something that we can work with from a data perspective. So our 75,000 US dollars from yesteryear translated into 21 Australian dollars would be 146,000 Australian dollars. And so you can then look at this and you look at the income that you receive as an individual and the likelihood that you have a medically diagnosed chronic mental health condition. And if you look at people on a low income of, under $20,000, about 19% of them have a medically diagnosed chronic mental health condition. And then you go up and up the income brackets and you see this share of the population with a medically diagnosed chronic mental health condition decrease. So once you are at about $100,000, 8% of the population have a medically diagnosed health condition. Then you go to about $200,000 and it's 5% who have a medically diagnosed health condition. Then you go about $500,000, over $500,000, and less than 4%. have a medically diagnosed chronic health condition. That, of course, you go, well, how could this study be criticized? This is just a lack of awareness. Or is that like, nah, I don't think that is the case, because who would have more capacity to just seek out a psychologist? These
Yes.
can be expensive. And I think the rich and famous would have the capacity to do so. So I think because the trend is so consistent, so clear and consistent, I think we can actually make the claim that yes, money makes it less likely that you suffer from poor mental health. Doesn't mean that you're a better person. Per se, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're happier. That's the day-to-day, well-being argument there. But I think it's still true, particularly in a high cost of living environment, an environment where housing, where the basics of life are so expensive. That, you mentioned your shower story. I mentioned an unexpected car repair bill that might come along. Quite a few problems that you will encounter in your life, you can just make go away with money. We get cynical when the rich do this by winning a law case that they shouldn't, or something like this. Then we become cynical. But money solves quite a few problems. It doesn't
Yes.
sound all
Yes.
that innovative or that new to many people, of course, but it is something it's worth, putting down in writing, putting down in a podcast to say, let's fact check the myth of this happiness plateau with money.
So money does help, but it's not the whole story, as we've said a couple of times. Now, I love the way you brought the demographic story into it with different age groups and also different income levels in Australia. I mean, demographics is what you do all day. If people don't know what you as a demographer do, how do you help your clients, Simon?
Well, so I look at data like this, much, much more demographic, much, much more macro data, and I try to piece together a likely version of what Australia will look like in the future. I try to explain why Australia arrived at the point that it is now. And with these kind of new bits of information in the back of their minds, people from any kind of audience, be this a boardroom, be this a presentation audience at a conference, be this the readers of a newspaper, they might be able to make a bit more sense of the world that is presented to them. Of course, the demographer would say that the demographic perspective always helps, and then they can make better decisions. And that's what I dedicate my career to.
Well, if people are interested in getting you to speak to their organization, their company, their boardroom, their presentation, I'll leave a link in the show notes so people can get in contact with the demographics group and see how you can help them. And if you're interested in developing your financial choices, freedom through property and wealth, our team at Metropole can help you safely outperform the markets using frameworks that I've fine-tuned over 5 decades and we've been helping our clients with for over 30 years. We help our clients safely grow, protect and pass on their wealth by giving strategic property and wealth advice and then helping them buy the right sort of properties. Go to metropole.com.au. Why not have a chat with one of our wealth strategists to discuss your options? Hey, if you've enjoyed Simon and my chat, please subscribe to this show wherever you're watching or listening to this and follow us, subscribe to us. And if you're listening on a podcast app, just click the automatic download so you get this each week. And if you'd like to catch Simon and me in person, we're going to be at Wealth Retreat on the Gold Coast. I'll leave a link in the show notes with a small group of people, successful business people, entrepreneurs and investors. And really the networking that occurs there, the information you get is, well, it's the 20th anniversary of Wealth Retreat, Simon, this year. So I know you're looking forward to it. You were telling me as well.
Absolutely. The Gold Coast, fun location to be doing a bit of hard work.
Yes, it is. Now, in your article, you mentioned that money, we've already hinted on this a little bit, money alone isn't enough. Really, there's other factors like relationships, purpose, health, community. That matters more, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And so the idea is don't obsess about money, but also don't disregard it. And this would also be an advice, not just for the individual, but also for a business owner, for a big fat boss, so to speak. Do not disregard the power of just handing out more money. This is a statement that people in the 90s would have laughed off as
Yes.
too obvious. But I feel these days we must remind people that this is absolutely a crucial motivator.
Well, given everything we've discussed, I guess the question is, what should people watching this listening to us do? And what should policymakers do with this information?
Well, I would say as a whole, we know that we saw this in the happiness data from Australia, is that the more you move from the lower income into the middle income, this is where the biggest gains in mental health are made, so to speak. So we just need to get people out of the misery of having not enough money for the absolute basics. So we need to push more people from low income to middle income jobs, or we need to increase the income on these low income jobs, or we need to make life much more affordable, meaning housing costs, electricity costs go down, to make sure that the existing dollars reach a bit further. So these are the levers that I would have politicians to push. It sounds, again, very, very obvious. Make life more affordable. Make sure that we weaponize our population with more money, because that ultimately makes them happier. And that is one of the big tasks that as a political class we should aspire to, is to ensure that our people are happy, healthy, and prosperous in a more complex sense. And yeah, that's
Do you
what
think,
should be the focus.
do you think people underestimate how much housing security contributes to happiness and life satisfaction?
If you have your housing unstable, that means if you're a young person who has to jump lease every couple of years, that is extremely stressful. This definitely draws down on your overall life satisfaction like crazy. You need to get the basics right. This is a stable home. This is what you try to give your kids. You try to give your kids a stable home, materialistic basics, and a decent routine. And as an adult, when this isn't taken care of for you, ideally, then you must take care of this yourself. And taking care of these things with a very small amount of money is outrageously difficult. And so we must help the low income chunk of the population to get these things sorted. And the best way is to either give them more money or make things cheaper. And things, more than anything, is housing.
Well, putting all this together, I think what I got from our discussion today, Simon, is research is now pretty clear. Money doesn't guarantee happiness, but financial stability absolutely reduces your unhappiness. It removes friction, it removes fears, it gives people options. And I think that's one of the things, having options. And if you've got financial buffers, it gives you breathing room as well. So for Australians in particular, that matters more than ever. We're living in a high cost, high pressure environment. Financial stress is one of the biggest contributors to poor mental health. Relationship stresses as well. We didn't even mention that, Simon, did we? That it makes things worse.
Absolutely. So we do know, for example, then when financial stress occurs in a relationship, it is more likely to break down. Um, Simply because it's a thing to fight over. It's a thing of constant frustration, and that creates friction. So if you remove this, if you have a stable financial setup where everything is clear, that is as predictable as it can be, that also helps your, your romantic relationship, if you will.
Of course. So while money helps most when it buys security, not status, as I said, money is useful in those areas where it's important and not at all useful in those areas where it's not. But if you've got the security, in general, you're going to have better well-being, better relationships, more purpose. And in fact, a lot of wealthy people give back to charity. I know you recognize it's a big part of what Pam and I do. And that, I guess, gives us a level of satisfaction as well. So sorry for offend some people. Money can buy happiness, but only when it's spent wisely, reduces your stress, protects you against life's inevitable surprises. Simon, once again, great insights. Thank you for those of you who've been watching and listening to us. If you don't currently subscribe, please do. And do us a favor. There's only one thing we ask of you each week, and that's to please share it with somebody else. Let somebody else know about the importance of money. Simon, look forward to catching up with you again next week. This Demographics Decoded podcast has been brought to you by Metropole Property Strategists. We provide a complete range of services to help our clients safely create intergenerational wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you're looking to buy an investment property or your next home, why not have a discovery chat with one of our wealth strategists? Just go to metropole.com.au and explore your options. You'll find we're much more than just another buyer's agent. We provide a complete range of services, including property advisory, wealth advisory, home buying, buyer's agency, property management, renovations, and development management services. The team at Metropole will help you with frameworks that I've fine-tuned over 5 decades, and we've been helping clients with for well over 25 years. We're big enough to tip the scales in your favour, but still small enough to care. In between these demographics decoded shows, you can follow me on social media, and I suggest you also follow Simon Kirstenmacher. You'll find him regularly posting on all social media platforms. And thanks for spending the last little while with Simon and me. I hope you got some benefit from the show. And if you did, and you know somebody who may also benefit, please tell them about Demographics Decoded. There's a share button on every podcast app. I hope you're going to be doing them a favour, and you're definitely going to be doing us a favour, helping us in our quest to make as many people as possible aware of the demographic changes that are going to be shaping their future. And of course, if you don't currently subscribe, we'd love you to. And of course, any of the information that we've been sharing with you is general information because we don't know your specific circumstances.